Hey, what's up? It's Comic95 the Savior, and for this video, I want to actually talk about the real weeaboos of Japan. So, when you think of the term weeaboo, the first thing that comes to mind is probably somebody wearing, super Japanese style clothing, which basically is not Japanese at all. Some decorative fashion or Lolita or something crazy subculture type stuff that nobody wears, and the people that do wear it look weird and get laughed at in Japan. Okay, that's probably what crosses your mind. Or the person that randomly throws in the 3 English words they know, like nani or kawaii or oyasumi, like simple basic stuff for no reason, like in their conversation, which is also stupid and a double standard because Japanese people do that with English. But we're gonna get to that part later. What I want to talk about is the real weeaboos of Japan. And I find that the ones that people find so annoying, so cringy, those are literally the people that should be the least of your concern. These people have a fascination with Japanese style, Japanese culture, Japanese things, but they do no harm to people normally for the most part. The annoying weeaboos are the people that live in Japan and have become so Japanese that they cannot see any faults with Japan. I've done videos on both of these two topics technically in the past, but I feel like it needs to be addressed again. So as always, I always tell people when they watch any of my videos or read any of my blog posts, this is my experience, my opinion, and I'm also aware that because different people think differently, I don't really want to discredit somebody's opinion or view, but I have to say that a lot of the times when I read things from other people, I kind of have to discredit their view because I feel like a lot of people don't understand Japanese culture, and thus they are going strictly based off of their American or European mindset when they're assessing what Japan is like, as well as going based off of their language ability. I gave a story before on my channel, I don't remember which video, in which I talked about I had a white American friend who spoke really good Japanese. She had only been in Japan for a few months before deciding to leave because she was having a hard time here. But back then, I couldn't even read hiragana, katakana, you guys. I think I had been in Japan. I was only in Japan for a few months at that time too, but I was there longer than she was. She had came even, further after me. I think she had been there for about 4 months, I think, and I was there for about 5 or 6 at the time. So anyway, she knew Japanese, but she didn't understand their culture. So for example, I told you guys a story about how we got in a train before and this girl ran to get on board on the same car as us, and she smacked into the door to do it, but it worked. And my friend was talking to her in Japanese, and she kept saying to her, "Oh my gosh, are you okay? Are you okay?" And the girl was kind of shaking her head yes, I'm fine. And the train is completely quiet, and my friend is talking quietly because she knows that much. But I had to nudge her, be like, Royce, sorry for saying your name, but I'm just telling the story, you'll be fine, girl. Anyway, I was like, Royce, I would kind of nudge her, you don't need to ask if she's cool. And so when she got off the train, I told her, I was like, in Japan, you don't do that. You're drawing attention to what happened. People are super, super shy, easily embarrassed. So as an American, your natural reaction is to kind of want to help the person. But in Japan, if someone hurts themselves, falls, anything, unless it's a really bad situation, it's expected for you to ignore it. By you trying to rush and help and be, the Superman of the day type thing, you're embarrassing them. So I would notice people that spoke and knew Japanese better than myself. They would constantly do little oddity, weird things that are taboo in Japan that they kind of expect foreigners to do, but it doesn't change the fact that it's embarrassing for them, and thus you're kind of out of touch with reality. Well, I noticed this whenever you talk about topics of Japan that are viewed as negative, so to speak. People want to believe that Japan is this perfect, mythical, alien-like place, and I think for everyone, when you first come here, unless you're just a total negative Nancy, you're going to feel that way. One of the biggest arguments that I see being made is about the cleanliness of Japan. People don't like to hear about Japan having bug problems or cleanliness issues. You can look at both of my videos. I did a video on Japan being dirty, and I did one on the bug problem here. And both of those videos, I think I've deleted some, and some accounts have gotten deleted too. But people are arguing and talking about, oh, well, that's not true. Go back to your home country, this, that, and the other. And it's like, guys, I can't talk about the obvious, that there is a clear issue with sanitary conditions here. What? And so instead of people being like, oh, okay, I didn't know this about Japan, or yeah, I guess you are kind of right, it becomes, oh no, you're wrong, because actually in this country, or in my country, or in America, and it's like, guys, we're talking about Japan. Let's stay with the facts. We're talking about where we currently are right now. We're talking about what country this video is about. We're not going to do a whole globe video on what country has this, what country has that. And as I've said before, I mean, again, it sounds like opinion based, but it's really not. It's factual. You can look at the janitorial staff as they clean. You would notice them using the exact same rag to clean everything in any given area. You will also notice that they use very little chemical. For example, they will spray something one time, literally one spritz of a disinfectant, and they will go up and down all of the handrails. They don't spray several times. They are very cheap when it comes to cleaning supplies, and it's oftentimes watered down too. And so not that water can't be used as a cleaning agent, but I mean, come on, you guys. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that everywhere in the U.S. cleans things perfectly and that people, use things properly, but this is very standard common practice. Normally, the materials are also old and have been used for God knows how long. It's not just in public places. If you go to a Japanese person's house, you'll normally notice that their soap containers are old, dirty, dusty, whatever, normally full because they don't use them. And just, little things like that. So sponges are normally old and nasty. When you go to restaurants, gloves aren't normally worn. So it's just little things like that. And so it really drives people crazy though. If you talk about, bug issues here, people don't like to hear that either. So, oh, you must be dirty, you must be whatever. Like, bitch, I'm living in a luxury apartment. I've never seen a bug a day in my life. But I'm not going to pretend like I did not come up to where I am now. And before I was here, I most certainly lived every place I lived in before my current apartment and the one before, they all had issues with bugs. It's inevitable. Japan has a bug issue. Insulation here is awful. Most of the homes here look like something from some type of third world developing country, despite the fact that, of course, once you go inside, people have technology and whatever inside their home. But even then, normal stuff like hot water in a bathroom is not a guarantee, a given. Not in the bathroom, in your kitchen is not a given. And having to share the, faucet for the sink and tub, which I don't have these issues right now. Like I said, I live in a luxury apartment, but I'm speaking for what most people's homes are like. And same thing goes for the cost of living. So I've talked about this before and I still have not made a video on it, which I will do. But even that, people trying to argue about, Japan being that and the other, and it's like, guys, don't get me wrong. Japan, it's easy to live in a nice area in Japan for a low amount of money in comparison to what it would cost in the US, but not in comparison to what your salary offers you. For example, in Japan, anybody that's working as a teacher can afford a luxury apartment in Tokyo. But the problem is, if you're living in a luxury apartment and you're single, and you're only making, let's say you're making $3,000 a month, your rent is swallowing at least half, if not more than that. Thus, you really can't afford it because now you're living paycheck to paycheck just to pay your rent. That is not normal for it to be taking up that much of your money. Sure, the cost of your rent is low, but not for the amount of space that you get. Thus, it is no longer a good deal. So that's the argument that I see people make. I am from a major city. I'm from Chicago. I'm not from some little, hick town, Illinois, or, whatever type place that people seem to think. When I, talk about these things, it's like, oh, well, in my city, in my place, in my whatever. Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, but that's not quite exactly it. And so it seems like anytime you want to critique or criticize Japan to these people, they have to tell you about what their country is like. They have to tell you about how great Japan is and how you're wrong. And it's just your experience. And I notice this with both black and white people. There's no, in Asian people too. So there's no exception to this. It's not a race thing. It's not even a country thing. I've seen it with Americans. I've seen it with Europeans. I've seen it with other East Asians, etc. It just drives people crazy. They don't like the idea of someone saying something bad about Japan. And anytime you do say something bad, people want you to follow it up with something positive because God forbid you leave something on a bad note. And it really just irritates me that there's people that think this way. Okay, so I ended up having to add this to my video after I had already recorded this video literally about a month ago. But I just saw today, well now I guess tomorrow because it's after midnight that I'm editing this right now. I just saw a post from a girl complaining about her experience going to a restaurant in Tokyo and being served at a ramen restaurant a drink that had a roach inside of it. and she had drunk from the water already until and noticed there was a bug inside of it. Not just any bug, a roach, you guys. A roach in a Tokyo restaurant. And instead of people being like, oh my God, that's so disgusting, blah, 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 people were getting mad at her. So let me give a little bit of backstory. After she explained the fact that the roach was in her water, she said that she didn't really mean to, but her natural reaction was to freak out. Oh my God, I almost, drunk a roach, and I technically drunk the water that it was in. This place is basically dirty, like it freaked her out. And so of course, she mentioned that she felt like she embarrassed the staff, and they gave her a refund. She never said that she was rude or disrespectful to them, but rightfully she was upset. And honestly, I would have felt the same way. In fact, I probably would have handled it a lot worse. I've talked about on my own channel my experience with dealing with bugs at restaurants before, as well as, being at houses, etc. here. And I was met with the exact same type of ignorance from, you guessed it, weeaboos, in which instead of them being like, oh my God, that's gross, really? Instead it's, oh, well, bugs are everywhere, or that's just your problem. Instead, it was literally, that ignorant reaction. Same thing went for her. And even funnier part is, people were literally commenting, trying to basically justify it by not only saying like, oh, bugs are everywhere, etc., but by saying that place, they're joking, but still there's a little bit of truth behind it. Essentially saying that places that are dirty, that have bugs, etc., like, the broth is good, basically. Just little jokey things like that. And then somebody even commented, and this was the most liked comment on her post, might I add. He had commented comparing her incident, because she said that she was traumatized by it and made her not want to go out to eat again. He mentioned about how he's from the Middle East and that, she doesn't know what trauma is. Trauma is, being paranoid of car bombs, etc. And I really hate when people do crap like that. It's like, why do you have to discredit someone else's experience or story by throwing in stuff that's completely irrelevant? Why can't you just accept the fact that there are crappy things here in Japan? Japan does some dirty crap that people don't talk about. You all are so busy focusing on people bowing to you and saying Ohayo gozaimasu and dumb crap like that you all completely ignore the reality, the real crap that goes on here. Japan is super behind on everything, from the way that they deal with women, from the way that they deal with foreigners, to the way that houses are run, the way that, the workplace runs. Everything here is backwards. Every single last thing, but nobody wants to talk about it. And when you do talk about it, you are literally the odd one out because everybody's too busy bowing down, kissing, and literally licking the tatami floors that these people walk on. Like, you literally cannot say anything bad about this country. It doesn't matter what race you are. If you say something bad, you will get met with 10 times more hate or anger than your feelings and emotions about the complaint. And it's really interesting because the things that people complain about have, for the most part, have nothing to do with Japanese people as individuals or their culture, but rather the environment. It's okay to go to the US and say it's dirty. I'm not going to get angry and be like, my country is not dirty. Don't say this. You don't understand. You're not an American. You just don't have money like us. That's not my reaction. Instead, my reaction is, really? You thought Chicago was dirty? Like, okay, yeah, I guess if you go to this area, it is pretty dirty. I'm not going to sit there and argue with you and try to defend how clean or dirty something is. But whereas in Japan, you say that the bathroom is dirty, you would think that you said kimonos are filthy or something. So it's just really crazy and stupid, but I can go on a whole rant about this forever, but I just thought that it was really funny that somebody said something that I made an entire video on, and that I've talked about that topic before. And I see both black and white people in my comment section that'll argue and defend it, like, oh, Japan is so clean. It's like, guys, if all you're using is your eyes and you just don't want to visually see a beer can, then fine, yes, it is clean. But I'm sorry, in the US, if your restaurant has not just an ant infestation, but in this case, a roach infestation, a rat infestation, they will close that hole down. You are not going to stay open, running business, and have no bad reviews. Here in Japan, you will not see a bad review for a restaurant from there being not just a roach, but roach infestations. I made a video in which I talked about how I had a guy who actually got mad at me and decided not to date me anymore. I kid you not. Because I got upset after I found out that the restaurant we were eating at, really popular, huge chain restaurant in Ikebukuro, Tokyo. After we had went there, I noticed that there was a huge amount of roaches inside of the building. There was literally a rug, like at the entrance, that the roaches were hiding underneath. And I think, I can't remember if I slipped on it or if he did. And when he went to move it and put it back to place, all of the roaches like went running out. And I told him how grossed out I was. Like, if I knew how nasty this place was, I wouldn't have wanted to eat here. And you have to think to yourself, if a restaurant, if a chain restaurant, fast food, any type of place, if they're not willing to go the extra mile to make the places that the customers can see look bug-free, clean, and presentable, what the hell is going on in the kitchen? Because if they're not going to bother to try to make the places that their customers can see look clean, you best believe that the kitchen is a nightmare. I talked about my experience working for an American restaurant, black people in Tokyo. Same situation. Did they have bugs? No. Did they have some dirty dish practices? Yes. And unfortunately, like I said, it was allegedly a black Christian-owned restaurant. They also didn't wash their hands. They also allowed their workers to go take out the trash and go straight to making salads, etc. But again, nobody wants to hear that because it's Japan. And in their place, their sorry Christian excuse, oh, we're a Christian restaurant, yeah, we're black owned, etc. Bullcrap. Y'all know what place I'm talking about too. But that's another story. So anyway, I'm done. I just thought that it was really funny, but also sad that you can't even, I mean, come on, in her situation, I didn't even get that far. Not to my knowledge. But it's like, come on, she literally had a bug in her drink and she drunk from it. The closest that I had to it is I did get Uber Eats some months ago, might even be a year ago now. I think it was months ago though. And there was a bug that came out of the bag of my food. It almost made me not want to eat at McDonald's anymore. But I can't prove whether it was from the restaurant or if it was from, sitting on the guy's bike or, being sat out in the hallway, whatever the case might have been. I have no idea. But I believe that it probably came from the restaurant because I'm pretty sure that the bag had to, been taped closed with the little McDonald's stickers. But all right, I'm done. I'm going 10 minutes into this, but that just made me so angry seeing people get mad at her instead of sympathizing for her and being like, oh my God, that's gross. I'm glad they gave you your money back. Yeah, write a review. Yeah, do whatever. Report it. Instead, everybody was trying to give other examples and stories and experiences on why her situation wasn't a big deal and how there's bugs everywhere. And, oh, well, look at New York. Look at whatever. Guys, in the U.S., if your place has bugs, your customers will get your place shut down. And we have organizations that monitor our restaurants, no matter how big or small. And if you get found out, your place will get shut down and you will be on the news. In Japan, there could be tarantulas in the kitchen. They ain't finna shut your place down. Nobody will even think to leave a review. It'll just be like, oh wow, I'm glad that didn't end up on my plate. So, alright, I'm done. Now I'm really done. Sorry, you guys, but I just got so frustrated. And yeah, as you can see, like, I'm not dressed and ready to actually sit here on camera, which is why you're just hearing me voice over this part. So we'll get back to the video. And again, like, that same love is not given back. When Japanese people go to the US, they don't hold back. They will tell you exactly what they think, how they feel, what they didn't like, and how much better their country is. So why can't we do it? We're both first world countries here. I don't understand that. You'll also see this with political news. So, for example, whenever anything happens, politic-wise or government-wise, especially in regards to this new virus that's been going around, people don't like seeing criticism and critique with that. So there are some foreigners that are smart and that have criticized the way that the government has reacted to it, just as I have said about them doing practically nothing. And people having meltdowns over the little bit that they do, such as early closures. And it's like, guys, people had legitimate lockdowns for the entirety of the year. Japan did a semi one, but only after the US did it. Japan also did, a stimulus check, so to speak, but only after the US did it. And they only did it once. Japan has taken very little criticism, and it is not publicized, the things that people are complaining about a lot either. Instead, the focus here on the news is just what's going on in the US, and of course showing like random places in Europe where they're completely ignoring the virus altogether, even worse than what the US is doing. So that's all that people seem to really be focused on there. And so when someone does speak up, not even myself, just looking at other white people, complain about Japan, there's always somebody else that'll say, well, look at what this country does, or look at the cases in the US, or look at whatever. And it's like, guys, we're talking about Japan at hand. And it's factual. Japan is not testing people here. Japan is not encouraging people to follow the same guidelines that we have in the US. For example, they know that there's no hot water here, so instead it's just, oh, wash your hands more and, wear a mask is really the big thing that people are trying to get people to do. When you go to bathrooms here, there's no soap still, and there's no hot water still, and you will still notice most people not properly wash their hands. Significantly more people are now flicking their hands with water, literally 2 seconds and out, like a spritz of water. I cannot make this stuff up, but that's it. I will also add, this is not a Japan specific thing. I've learned that apparently this is a common thing in Asia. I'm sorry to my Asian subscribers, but for those of us from the US in particular, this is very taboo and kind of nasty to us. For us, if you don't wash your hands, you come out of the bathroom, you are dirty as hell. Do people do that? Yes, I've seen people go to the bathroom in the US and not do it. But it's rare to see, especially when there's someone else in the bathroom with you. People normally feel socially obligated to wash their hands. Have we gone to the bathroom without washing our hands? Yes, I've done it several times. I would be a liar if I pretended like I'm holier than thou and I've never gone to the restroom without washing my hands. But yeah, like that's one of many things. And again, restaurants is the weirder part for me, like being able to just freely touch stuff. And people wipe their nose and dig in their ears and all type of stuff without washing their hands. Both of those things are socially acceptable in Japan, might I add. Digging in your nose, digging in your ear. People will do that right in front of you and not think anything of it. Like how in the US, if you do it, you would think to either wash your hands, wipe them off, or, you want to hide what you're doing so people don't see it. But you'll commonly see people doing this on the train, at restaurants. Nothing's thought of it. So yeah, it just really kills me that people can't handle people saying anything about Japan, and not just talking about things that Japanese people do, but even complaints about Japan. So like anytime that I say that I don't like something or that I have a bad experience, it is always met with somebody has to tell you about how wonderful their experience is. Now, oh, it's just you, or I can't relate. And it's like, girl, like, that's good for you. And it's normally men. So I'm not trying to pinpoint one specific person. And again, I'm not trying to say that everybody has to be in 100% agreement with me on everything. We're all different people. But I will add that I find that when people have nothing but praises and good things to say about Japan, it's normally a lack of both, if not one of the two things, which is a lack of cultural understanding and or a lack of language ability. It does no good to speak Japanese if you don't understand culture. It is so much better if you understand culture over language. Because before I could even speak Japanese, because I knew how they thought and how they functioned, I understood why people were doing things. For example, I mentioned before to that same friend even, that some people don't like the thought of you giving up your seat for them, as it can be embarrassing for them, as in you're saying that, oh, they're too fat to stand or they're too old. It highlights the fact that, they are disabled or whatever the case might be. You have situations where people are grateful for you giving up your seat, which I've done that before. But in a lot of circumstances, people don't want you to do that. Again, something that you would not catch as a foreigner normally if you don't understand culture. These are small, petty, insignificant examples, but it builds on to so much more. Same thing goes for issues with Japanese people when it comes to issues like rudeness. Someone left a comment about this recently that actually made me think about making this video, which is, something that a lot of people feel and think, so I wanted to address it here too. So to be totally honest, I don't really think any particular city in Japan is exclusively ruder than the other, but rather in Japan, when most people come here, they go to Tokyo. Most people want to get a job in Japan. They normally move to Tokyo if they're planning to start a career. Countryside areas don't have a lot of business, and if you work in Tokyo, generally your salary can potentially be more, although of course the cost of living also goes up as well. Normally the more uppity, prestigious jobs are located within Tokyo. And with that said, that's normally when people also go to school as well. There's, the biggest universities are there. So naturally, you might want to, leave college and go straight to school. I mean, not go straight to school. Leave college and leave straight from school and start your career there too. So why not just go to college near where you're going to work eventually? And with that said, yes, like a lot of people that live in Tokyo are not actually from Tokyo. Rather, they're from other cities, other prefectures in Japan. So when people complain about Tokyo, people being rude or anything else, you're probably actually dealing with somebody that is not a true Tokyoite and is actually from another area, but has now been residing in Tokyo. Thus, it depends on what your definition is. For example, some people from the US don't consider you to be from an area unless you were born and raised there. Others consider themselves to be from there if they spend a significant time or if they were raised in that area. So it totally depends. So with that said, this is not to say that rude people cannot exist in a place or that rude people do not exist in Tokyo, but rather, I hate when people try to discredit someone's bad experience with Japanese people by limiting it to being like, oh, it's where you live. Or, oh, it's just you. And it's like, no, maybe you're blind and you don't see the shit that I see, is what you should say. So, for example, for myself, I've talked about the fact that I see a lot of people making videos about what it's like being black in Japan. And I've done several on this topic. And again, as I've said in those videos too, my intention is never to discredit other people. Everybody has different experiences, but that's also the reason why I don't like that blanket statement and label, which I hate to say this because I know that I have a lot of subscribers that are black, even though most of my audience is actually European. But with that said, how can I say? My videos are not specifically made for black people. So when I talk about issues, generally, unless it's titled about being black, it's not made for a black person. But when I watch other people's videos, they blanket all of us together. And don't get me wrong, to a certain extent, some things do apply to all of us, but for other things, they do not. For example, there are stereotypes and hurdles that other people have to cross that I don't, because while I am black, I am a black American. And you might think, well, they don't know, they can't tell the difference, they can't see. Actually, they can. I can't say this without being offensive to people, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Some of the easy ways that people generally assume that you are a black American in particular is based on how you dress, where you live, your skin complexion, your hair, your facial appearance. It is assumed that if you are attractive, if you have light skin, if you seem to be wearing clothing that looks like it's expensive, and again, depending on where you work and, where you're, living, etc., it all plays into the fact that you must be, an American. Of course, upon speaking to somebody, they can tell your accent in most circumstances. Most people in Japan listen to American music and they watch our movies, etc. And with that said, they know an American accent when they hear one too. And thus the way that you're treated, the way you interact with people is generally significantly different than, the experience that somebody that is from Africa, for example, will have. I'm not going to go through that piece you kept. Africa is a continent. Yes, I know that. But again, this is how Africa is treated, just like Asia. We often say Asia without giving a specific country, just like how we say Asian or European. We get it. And with that said, of course, like most people, everybody is not familiar with all of the countries in Africa, and Japanese people most certainly aren't. But to my knowledge, I think the majority of people that are living in Japan that are African, I think, at least from who I've spoken to, I cannot speak on this factually, seem to be Nigerian, but I'm not sure. I have to do my research. I'll do it again after this video because I know I looked it up before, but I remember there was something like back in the 80s or 90s that allowed a lot of Africans to get permanent residency here in Japan, and that's why they have like little bars and businesses or whatever in the Tokyo area. So yeah, with that said, their experience is different from mine based on their job, their country of origin, their first language, and not just that, their appearance. You cannot compare somebody that is heavy set, a heavy set, dark skinned black person that has children to somebody that is the polar opposite of that. And also to add on to that, it's not just a matter of complexion, but again, I'm saying all of the layers that count. I'm not sugarcoating, being real. But it goes deeper than that. Again, like just appearance wise. If you are not attractive and you're comparing yourself to somebody that is, your experience will not be the same. And I'm not talking about the fake lying to yourself, everybody's beautiful type thing. I'm just being real with you guys. If you are not seen as attractive, you will not be treated as attractive. That's all I have to say to that. And so this is not equating attractiveness to a skin complexion. Like I said, there are plenty of women here that are, dark skinned, and they have families here, and they've been in Japan for years and years, and they're loving their life, loving themselves. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is that complexion does play a role. Colorism does exist. People do have preferences. People do make assumptions. There are stereotypes. The list goes on. But generally speaking, overall, of course, black will be seen as black, but people are not blind. They can tell the difference between somebody that is dark-skinned and somebody that is light-skinned. That's just factual. And so, again, it's not to say that this person's experience is not true or isn't, whatever, but their experience will be different from yours because you don't look like that person. Even if you both have the same skin complexion and both from the same country. Okay, what does that person look like, though? being light-skinned is not equivalent to being attractive. You can be ugly as hell and be light-skinned. You can be, you know, very dark-skinned and be very beautiful, or very ugly. There's lots of variations to these things. So I'm not trying to get dragged off into that, because this video is not about that, and I'm about to wrap it up. But I just hate whenever people make like blanketed statements like black people get treated like this, or this is how they do stuff for black people, whatever. And it's like, no, this is your circumstance. This is your behavior, how you talked, where you were, your, you know, ability to, you know, how can I say, navigate your circumstances, so to speak. For example, if you lack language ability, you lack cultural skills, you lack decency and manners as a person. Sure, you can make a video complaining about, you know, people treating you badly and being rude to you, but maybe you didn't understand that you were perceived as being rude and disrespectful to their country and their culture. Not to justify it, but rather to say, this is what happens when you do X, Y, Z, and not a matter of this is the country as a whole. And I am not trying to be a Japan defender, that's the whole purpose of my video, but rather I'm saying, you have to learn how to take things into perspective. Think about, what do you really have in common with this person, and not to try to, you know, take, you know, how can I say, take apart their story and to make them a liar or their information not true, or say that you can't apply it to yourself, but rather to not take things that people say and just run with it, so to speak. So I'm kind of getting sidetracked, as you can tell, but it's not just a matter of people giving their own story, telling their own experience, but rather people telling their experience based off of their knowledge. So that's the negative side of it. But I see people more often do this with the positive side, where people like something about Japan and they just go on bragging about it, not knowing what they're talking about. And again, like, those are the biggest things that I see, talking about the cleanliness in Japan, which is not true, because people here don't wash their hands, they don't wear gloves, they use old dirty products to clean everything. And so while it visually looks clean, it's not really clean to the touch. So it's just small things like that. They don't even wear a mask. So like, the reasons for stuff, like, there's so much false information about Japan out there. I had another guy recently, which I just started deleting his comments. They were going to spam anyway, but I had a couple that made it through without, you know, getting filtered, leaving false information, like telling the story about this guy that went to some onsen and was being sexually harassed. And again, this is not to discredit that guy, but it's like, for starters, your comment is kind of rude, because this is on my video about my experience. Secondly, the information that was being given was not true. I don't know this guy. I don't think I saw that story, but it does sound familiar, so maybe I did. But with that said, if that man did come to the conclusion that this is only because he's not Japanese, I would have to disagree. It's not true. They treat everybody the same way here when it comes to stuff like that. And I'm not saying that it's right, but I don't condone purposefully giving false information about something, because I don't want people to do that to me or to my country, for example. So yeah, the guy was saying that, oh, you know, they don't care about you because, you know, they care about American white women, blah, blah, blah. And so it's like, how did this become a race issue between white and black people? So it's just so many crazy people out here, you guys. I'm sorry, I had to move to adjust my camera. My leg was getting tired. So anyway, yeah, like, it just like pains me so much. I'm sorry that I got so off subject, so off track, but I just hate talking to people that can't take criticism or critique towards Japan. I literally made a video specifically talking about that, but I just wanted to like bring it up again because I keep seeing it happen. Like, instead of saying like, oh, well, you know, this is just your experience or just whatever, which again, to one extent, yeah, that is true. But for some things, like, this is not about my experience. This is as a whole. Like, when I talked about hand washing, people are like, oh, well, it's just your circle of friends. It's just your whatever. No, sweetheart, it's not. You know, take your anime lenses off and look at the real picture. So anyway, I just find it really interesting that people seem so annoyed with people that like cosplay, people that like kawaii fashion, and all that type of like, you know, weird Lolita type stuff. But nobody seems to be bothered by the Japan worshippers that think Japan can do no wrong. Anything that Japan does is perfect, is great, is excellent. There's no problems, no worries here. And again, for people that come to Japan with an American mindset, or European, wherever you're from, I'm from America, so I'm going to say American, you won't see these things. So I talked about myself. I was ignorant too. I'm not trying to talk to you on my high horse. I was just as dumb as you are. And when I first came here, I didn't notice anything, because I had inside of my mind that if people don't like me, they're going to let me know. And they were kind of letting me know, but I just didn't see it. So, for example, I didn't notice people avoiding sitting next to me. I didn't notice when people were getting up and moving away from me. Because in my mind, it was like, oh, empty seat, sit down. Or ask the person if they can move over, which I've done that before too. I didn't know any better. And as I stayed here longer and started reading about people's, ghosting phenomenons, I started noticing people are moving away from me. And my aha moment, as I said before, I can never forget that situation. I got on the train and I sat down, I plopped down on the seat. The Japanese girl beside me, she jumped up so fast. You would think that I sat down on an eject button. She hopped out of that seat so quickly, it embarrassed the crap out of me. And I can't remember if I stayed there in the seat or what I did. I think I did stay there, but I was beyond embarrassed. And this comes from somebody that, I wear deodorant, I don't stink, and I take care of myself. And so I knew it had nothing to do with that. And so I just kept trying to make up excuses in my mind. I was like, did I smell bad? Like, was there something wrong with me? Did I do something wrong? Did I hit her? I didn't know what happened. I kept trying to bring it back on myself, that there must have been something wrong on my end. And I find that when I talk to these real weeaboos, that's what their conclusion is. Anytime you don't like something or anytime something is bad, they convince you, well, it's bad for you because you don't know this or you didn't do this. And it's like, sweetheart, I probably speak better Japanese than you do. And I probably know more about Japan than you do. Don't speak on shit that you don't know. Again, it's like anytime people want to say something negative about Japan, you have to get reminded that, well, no. It's only bad for you, or I haven't had that experience. Everything's perfect and lovely. It's like, good for you, ho. But maybe one day you'll open up your eyes and you'll see the stuff that I'm talking about. So again, with those people that I was saying earlier, people that have bad experiences here dating or, living in Japan and making friends, it's not that their story isn't true. I've had bad experiences with that stuff as well. So it's not to discredit it, but rather to acknowledge, okay, this was their situation. I haven't experienced this yet, but it does exist. I'm aware of the good things. That's why I'm here in Japan right now. If Japan was truly awful, really bad, I would have gone home a long time ago. So again, it has nothing to do with that. It's not a matter of me saying everything's bad. If you don't agree with me and my bad points, everything you say is wrong. No. Rather, let's acknowledge both sides of things. We constantly praise and worship Japan all the time, so much. Let's talk about the real issues that people do have here. Sorry, but pressing a button on a dirty super toilet that's had the same rag cleaning all 600 seats in the whole building is not going to make somebody want to stay in Japan. The real issues that matter are social issues. The real issues that matter are, things like politics and finances and, real talk, real stuff, work environments. Even then, it's like anything bad that happens to you in Japan, it has to be your fault as the foreigner. And you expect that from a Japanese person, but it just baffles me when I see other black, white, and other Asian people that are not Japanese, buying into that too. And again, I used to be ignorant like that as well, but at least I was young and had an excuse. I'm still young, but it just amazes me when I see older people singing these same songs. So all I'm saying is, if you're mad at people that, are obsessed with Japan and they like gaming, otaku culture, whatever, and, kawaii fashion or whatever type of fashion, you're mad at the wrong crowd. The real weeaboos, the real annoying people, are the people that defend Japan at every turn. You cannot criticize the handling of the government, the way that money works. You can't criticize jobs, friends, dating, sex, anything. I can go on with so many stories from a guy that was telling me that I was trying to be culturally superior. I forgot what he said. It was a white guy too. He was American, of course. He was telling me that by me complaining about Japanese people trying to use me for, have sex, or use me for free English lessons, that there was nothing wrong with it, that it's basically an exchange. I get companionship and a friend, and for them they get English. They get to learn English for free. And I'm thinking to myself, now imagine if somebody said that in the US. Do you think a Japanese person would be okay with that if they found out that people only wanted to be their friend because they thought, oh, I never had sex with an Asian girl before, or I want to see if Japanese guys really have small dicks, or I really wanted to learn karate? You'll be okay with it at first, like how I was. When I first came to Japan, I was stoked. I was like, cool, I want to do language exchange. And then over time, it got to the point where it's like, okay, I'm tired of being the token black friend where it's like, yeah, I love Wiz Khalifa type thing. And so it's like, all right, at first, it's cool. You want to make friends. You want to share your language, your country, your culture. You don't mind telling people for the 1 billionth time why you came to Japan, which is also really, I can't call it egotistic, whatever you want to call it. A really nationalist question. Like, imagine as an American if every time we met an Asian person, we said, oh, I know why you came to America. It's because you like Hollywood, right? We have the best movies, the best music. We're the land of the free, right? You came here because we have so much more money than your country. That's all I hear in my mind. And Japanese people like patting themselves on the back for those things. Yeah, Japan is so clean, right? America's so free. We don't have people killing ourselves every 2 seconds on trains, right? So it's like, okay, now that you get what I'm getting at, it kills me that people do stuff like that. So it's like, there's nothing, no matter what country you come from, there's nothing okay with using people, whether it's for language, for sex, whatever. And you have the right to be upset. And Japanese people would get upset, and they do get upset when they come to the US, and people do crap like that to them. So why is it that I can't complain about these things? Why is it that we can't say something, speak up about these issues? Everything cultural is not okay. There are cultures that permit child marriages, sexual abuse, and abuse towards women. Is that okay too because it's cultural? Because I can think of a lot of Middle Eastern countries that fall into that. Does it make it okay because their culture, their religion permits it? I don't think so. Okay, so why can't we see that with Japan? It doesn't matter that this is what people are used to, this is what people do, this is what people blindly don't think about, because they surely don't. When people talk to you, they remember all they do is live around other Japanese people. And they don't care to research other countries or cultures because all Japan cares about is themselves and their appearance to the outward world. They're not concerned about your country, your culture, your feelings. Most people don't have that type of sensitivity towards other cultures, races, and religions unless they've specifically studied it in school or unless they've gone abroad or, of course, have a foreign spouse or know of someone that does, etc., foreign friends. And even then, a lot of people don't know. I've had Japanese friends that have lived abroad and insisted on only using English with me. And at first, I didn't care, but then as time went on, it's like, imagine if you did that in the U.S. Imagine if you had a friend that, was Asian, and you insisted, I'm only going to talk to you in Chinese, because my goal in being friends with you is really just to, maintain my Chinese. I want to learn from you. And if you try to speak to me in English, the language of our country in the U.S., I'm just going to reply back to you in Chinese because that's our conversation. You're my token friend. You might not mind at first with the first couple of friends, maybe even the first 10, first 20, but stay here a little bit longer. And it will get to you. It will become annoying. Same thing goes for the small things that I've complained about, like people, using English at, restaurants or at convenience stores or service places, or people, not giving you the correct eating utensil, like giving you a spoon or a fork for something that doesn't make sense instead of chopsticks. At first, it seemed like a small issue. It's like, oh, why are you complaining? Why are you bitching about this? Whatever. But it's like, guys, do that for a long time and it becomes bothersome. It does. And it's insulting and rude. And again, if you're someone that can't get used to this, for example, no offense, just being real, for white people, this is harder to get used to because for them, they've never been a minority for most white people in any situation. So for them, a lot of things fly right over their head. But as a black person, I'm already sensitive and aware of things that are going on around me. And even although I've tried to, drop my guard a little bit because I don't have to worry about these things as much in Japan, I am more prone or susceptible, whatever you want to call it. I notice things more than other people. I'm more sensitive to what's going on. And over time, things do become problematic. And that is one of them. As I said before, imagine if I were in the U.S. and I worked at a convenience store, Walgreens, which I did work at. Imagine if every time I have a customer that's Asian, I always stop speaking English and I ask them in Chinese, all of the questions. I give them their change in Chinese. Even if my Chinese is broken, that's what I do. If they try to speak to me in English, I go specifically use Chinese. I remind them that I speak Chinese as we're talking. And I don't say thank you. I do everything. Everything has to be done in Chinese. Did my customer even tell me that they were from China? If they are from China, how do I know they even can speak Chinese? You can be from America and not speak English. So I just think to myself, like, okay, it wouldn't be okay in my country or culture. People would get offended at that. Imagine if when you went to restaurants, people did the same thing. So instead of being offered a fork, they're like, oh, you're one of those Asians, aren't you? And they gave you chopsticks. At first, you might be happy. As an Asian person, you're the majority in this world. If you've never lived in the US or Europe before, you're happy. You're like, wow, these white bitches got chopsticks. You happy as fuck. You can eat your favorite food the way that you've always eaten. You might take a picture, show your friends. Now fast forward 5 years, and people are constantly only handing you chopsticks, while everybody else is getting forks. They don't even ask you if you prefer it. They just give it to you because they're doing you a favor. It's innocent and they mean well, but it's rude. And again, if you really want to, get the best case scenario or, play devil's advocate, fine. If someone asks you, no complaints there really. For example, I don't mind somebody asking, do you prefer English or is Japanese okay? Like things like that is totally fine. But to make the assumption that this is what somebody needs is rude. For a tourist, it's okay. But for someone that lives there, I mean, come on. Especially when it comes to services in which you know that if somebody's coming to you in this circumstance, they are a resident. And don't get me wrong, I know of people personally that have been in Japan for anywhere from, 8 to 20 plus years, longer than I've even been alive, that cannot speak Japanese fluently. Some who can't even read hiragana katakana don't know any Japanese. And they are appreciative of these things. They can't use chopsticks. They haven't even tried. They don't care. They tried and gave up. They'll gladly accept a fork. I have friends like that even. But they are not everyone. There are black people that don't mind people saying the N-word. There are black people that don't get offended by, things that do offend other black people. Just because a group of people are okay with something doesn't mean everyone else is. Just because you don't notice something doesn't mean no one else does. Just because you've chosen to ignore rudeness and racism and unfair treatment and prejudice doesn't mean that I have to. The people that you are defending, they don't ignore it. When they go abroad, they will gladly come back home and tell all of their Japanese friends, as well as their foreign friends, about any negative experience that they had in your country. So while you're busy capping for Japan and defending them and trying to make sure that nobody thinks or says anything bad and reminding everyone, oh, well, this isn't my experience. Everything's perfect here. Everything's great. I can't relate to that. They're not doing that for you. So I don't see why I wouldn't want to do something like that for someone if they can't return the favor. Why lie to yourself like that? And again, you might not even really be lying. You might just be clueless like how I was. I didn't notice the stuff. I didn't notice people talking about me, laughing at me, nothing. It took me learning both culture and language and being observant to see what was really going on. So that's that. I'm going on a 3-hour video here. All I have to say is, before you get mad at the so-called weeaboos that, like Japanese culture, get mad at the people that defend Japan at every given turn. The ones that have convinced themselves that being basically, I can't even use the word, being a child fiddler or being somebody that takes advantage of, men and or women is normal and a part of culture, whether it be, through sexual means or whether it be through using them for their language skills or whatever. Ask yourself, would this be okay in your country? Do you think they would be okay with you doing that to them? And the answer is probably no. Imagine if I asked every Japanese person when I met them, can you teach me karate? What if they don't know karate? Can you show me how to use chopsticks? Can you teach me Japanese? What if they're not even from Japan? Why are you making these assumptions? So it really tickles me so much. And again, I can understand why they do it, but that doesn't change the fact that it needs to be corrected and that it is disrespectful. For example, in the U.S., a big part of why people now, with emphasis on now, know how to talk to Black, Asian, and or Hispanic people is because we've had so much cultural sensitivity stuff from TV to movies to books to school to friends to now YouTube telling us things that are seen as inappropriate. For example, a lot of people didn't know any better. They didn't know that it was kind of rude to ask to touch a Black person's hair. They didn't know the history behind the problem with it. Everybody's not bothered by it. For example, I can be honest, I am not really bothered by it. If you ask me, I'm okay. But for the average person, no. There's history to it and or behind it. Now, because I'm okay with it, do I speak for every black person? Absolutely not. I also understand why people want to. If you have curly, fine, straight hair, naturally you want to know what a coarser hair type feels like, or curly hair. A lot of people wish they had curly hair. I would be a liar if I pretended like I was not interested in touching a white or Asian person's hair, because their hair feels very different from mine. My boyfriend's hair feels like some type of doll hair. It doesn't even feel real. It feels like satin. Very big difference between his hair and mine's. So, again, for some people it's degrading, it's dehumanizing. I see where that comes from, but the problem from my perspective is more so when strangers do it and when it's done in an animal-like way. I don't mind people being curious about curly hair or wanting to understand, dark skin or, anything like that. I can understand these things. I can understand questions about my hair. I can understand questions about my skin, etc. And so I do believe in leniency when it comes to some ignorance because people don't know any better. I had a Hispanic woman that had half black kids, and she didn't know that I used conditioner in my hair. She thought it was just a white people thing, or in her case, white Hispanic, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what they call you all. White Latina? Whatever the word is. And so I couldn't believe it. I was like, there's Hispanic people that don't know this? Okay. Like, I expect that from a white girl, but then again, she kind of was. But anyway, not going to go there with you all because y'all already going to get angry at me. But yeah, it's like you really don't know any better until people teach you have to learn. And for most Japanese people, they don't care to look into this stuff. It's not that they don't have the chance to. There are black people here. They have mixed race people here. They mostly watch our media over their own. But rather it's a matter of not choosing to seek out this information. A matter of choosing to not listen to it. And of course, a lack of people correcting it. Because for the foreigners that do live here, they just eat it up. They're glad to get attention. They don't care. They're glad to have a friend. They're glad to have somebody to have sex with. They're glad to be learning some Japanese. They don't correct people when they say, ask, or do ignorant things to them on the basis that they're a foreigner. And it's believed that you're easy to have sex with, you're easy to take advantage of, and they can get free lessons from you. And that's just one of many examples, like I said. But it kills me. So that's that. And it's not just people that are okay with doing these things. It's people that can't stand Japan or Japanese people being criticized. Those are the real weeaboos. Those are the real Japan worshippers. The real cringeworthy people. The real so-called weeaboos, they don't normally bother anybody. They're in their own world, doing their own thing, just being a real weirdo and having fun. And I support that. So I'm finally done. All I wanted to say, if you have anything you want to add, you disagree, go ahead and leave a comment. The whole point of this long video is simply to say, people that are seen as weeaboos, they are some of the nicest, coolest people to talk to, hang out with. They're unbothered. They do their own thing. They're not here to mess with anybody. And a lot of them, they don't really care so much about Japan being criticized. A lot of them. The real annoying people are the ones that come here and cap for Japan on everything and try to be Japanese so hard, so bad. The ones that have to remind you they can't speak English anymore. They're forgetting English, this, that, and the other, which you do because I've even forgotten stuff before. I actually forgot the word cilantro. I forgot can opener. I could think of a whole list of words that I've forgotten. I hear people say words all the time when I speak to my U.S. friends. I watch the news. I'm like, wow, I actually haven't heard that in a long time. I just recently started watching the U.S. news every day to maintain my vocabulary. Like, it's gotten to that point. So I get what people are saying, but it's like, you have people that are trying so hard to stray away from their foreignness and to embrace the Japaneseness, which there's nothing wrong with doing that. Assimilation is great. I support it. I try to do it too. But there's a difference between assimilating and trying to become something that you're not, and doing so to the point where you're just out of touch with reality, where you no longer see any bad, any wrong, any harm in anything that this country does. And I never want to be like that. And I can't stand people who are like that. You don't have to necessarily think something is bad just because your home country thinks it's bad. but you don't have to lie and pretend like something is good just because Japan says it's good. So that's that. I'm done with this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like. You want to argue, you got something to add, leave a comment down below. Other than that, as always, I'd appreciate it if you'd follow me on my Instagram and Twitter account at comic95. And I also have a Facebook page and a Snapchat as well. The links to everything are down in the description. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos like this on random topics. I try to upload a new video every day at 8 a.m. Few hiatuses here and there, but I always come back. Yeah, so thank you for watching.